Sure. Yeah, he's going to hook up one to the computer too, so we can try and make sure we capture what we can. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, well, it just picked me up a little bit.
There it goes.
Okay. I don't think you'll have to project too much.
Did you want to just, because I just signed it out, so if you just want to take it back to
Absolutely. Close this. Put that down there.
I think that'll work for you.
Okay. Whenever you're ready. Thanks. Quick show of hands, how many of you, before hearing about this presentation, were already familiar with fair trade? So most of the people here. My name is Tammy Green, and just a little background on how I got involved in this. A few years ago, I kind of felt like I needed to do something, needed to give back somehow, and I just got on a volunteer website in Indianapolis, and it listed hundreds of different places you could volunteer, and was just scrolling through and happened to see this fair trade and researched that a little bit and became very interested in that. They asked for 2 4-hour shifts a month. I actually started out doing 2 a week. Then I moved into the volunteer coordinator position, which was a 20 hours a week, going out, recruiting, training, informing the public. So doing a lot of background research on just why fair trade is so important. And I want to start out here with the city of Dhaka in Bangladesh. This is the fastest growing city in the world, currently has a population of about 15 million people, and they gain about 500,000 per year. We're seeing similar trends worldwide of people moving out of rural areas and into more urbanized areas, but it's just growing faster here than anywhere else. No city is set up to accommodate 500,000 new people a year. They are living in shanty towns, plywood shacks, no electricity, no running water. 70% of them are in less than $170 a month. That's not very much money for a family to live on. The biggest industry in Dhaka is making clothing. This is going to account for about 80% of their exports. 4.5 million people employed in garment factories here. They are not making a lot of money doing this. They are the lowest paid garment workers in the world. The conditions are just absolutely horrific. There have been numerous fires, collapses, people die. In 2012, there was a fire factory considered the deadliest factory fire in that country's history. 117 people dead, 200 injured. Of those 117 people that died, 53 of them were buried without any name on their tombstone because they were burned beyond recognition. The reason for that is they're not set up with proper exits. The doors, they go in the morning and the doors get barred. There's bars over the windows. They simply weren't able to get out when the fire started. All of that for 18 cents an hour. And people often say, oh, well, it's Bangladesh, so 18 cents goes a lot farther. That's the equivalent of about 55 cents an hour here. None of us could live on 55 cents an hour. For a long time, Walmart denied any ties to this factory until people started going in and finding remnants of clothing with Walmart tags on them. So Walmart was one of the biggest purchasers of garments from this particular factory. Just about a year later, in 2013, there was a building collapse. They had been warned the day before that this building was unsafe. There was some construction going on in the area. Engineers came in and said, no one should be in this building. The first floor, which was banks and shops, those people didn't come in that day. The garment factory workers on the upper floors were told, come in and go to work or you lose your jobs. So they came in, they went to work, and the building collapsed. 2,500 injured, over 1,000 people dead. This is the worst factory accident in modern history, not just in this nation's history of Bangladesh, but anywhere in the world. So you think, okay, things have to start to change after something that's that horrific. And they did a little bit. Their pay was doubled. So they're now making $68 a month. If you break that down and assume a 40-hour work week, which most of them are working a lot more, assuming a 40-hour work week, that'd be 42 cents an hour. They're still, even after doubling their pay, the lowest paid garment workers in the world. Just this year, February, there was a fire in a factory that supplied clothing for H&M and JCPenney's. 4 workers and 1 firefighter injured. Just in September, there was a boiler that exploded in a sweater factory. 23 people dead, 70 injured. It could have been much worse, but this happened at about 6 o'clock in the morning, so the only people that were there were the people working in this sweater factory because they're running 24/7. But all the other people that work in that building were gone. So it's great for the people who sell this clothing. It's great for Walmart. It's great for JCPenney that the people who are making the clothing are making 42 cents an hour. But how much? What's the true cost of that labor? Pardon me. The country itself doesn't want to do anything about this because it's their main industry. If they tried to put a stop to this, they'd put 4.5 million people out of a job. That's their main export. That's their main source of income for the entire country. Still today, 3/5 of the garment factory buildings there, according to the engineers of Bangladesh, are susceptible to collapsing. And yet they're still going to work. They're still doing the jobs. As far as the people, what else are they going to do? So when we go out to mega conglomerate box store and we buy that $14 t-shirt, where's our money going? Of that $14, 12 cents is going to the people who made that shirt. That's less than 1% of the cost of that shirt goes to the people who made it. $8, a little over $8 of that goes into the pocket of the owners of mega conglomerate box store. And there's this tendency to want to blame the people who own that factory that caught on fire or collapsed. But they're not making a lot off of that either. The factory overhead, 7 cents. That's what they're operating on. That's their lights, their gas, their heat. The factory owner themselves is getting 58 cents of that $14. It's hard to keep those conditions safe when they're not getting the money to put back into that factory building to keep it safe. So what is the alternative to all of this? Fair trade is the alternative. This is one group in Dhaka, Dhaka Handicrafts. It's owned by the artisans. So the people who are making the products that are being sold own the company. They employ about 3,200 people in Dhaka, which out of 15 million is not a lot, but there's a ripple effect. Those 3,200 people plus their families, so it's supporting about 16,000, which still out of 15 million is not a lot, but it's a start, and you've got to start somewhere. They make environmentally friendly products. They mostly do basket weaving. They do a lot of bamboo. They do a lot of recycled plastic baskets. So taking things out of landfills, turning it into beautiful products. They're paid a fair wage. They're paid a living wage, unlike the garment factory workers. They address gender issues. So women are paid equally to men, just not something we see a lot happening in countries like Bangladesh. They try to put women in leadership positions. Again, not something that we see happening in Bangladesh. Okay, but I still need to buy clothing. Where am I going to get clothing? There is a lot of fair trade clothing out there. You just maybe have to look a little bit for it. Here's one company called Mata Traders. This is based in India and Nepal. run entirely by women. They're paid a living wage, fair, safe, healthy working conditions. They make this clothing from the very beginning. They spin the threads that are going to be used to make the clothing. They dye the fabric. They weave the fabric. These women are working at home. They don't have to get up and go however many miles to this huge factory and get locked in every day. They do their work at home. They can watch their kids. They can take care of their families. They can work as much or as little as they want to work. They do their own silk screening, their own block printing to put designs onto the fabric. So with silk screening, you basically have sort of like a stencil, and then you press the dye over top of that. With block printing, they do an inverse carving on a wooden block and stamp the dyes onto the fabrics. You see the little kid up there on the table with the fabric. They're taking care of their families while they're making money for their families. They do the sewing. One person makes the entire garment from beginning to end. It's not an assembly line. Any embroidery that's done, they do it by hand. They take extreme pride in their product. Do you think that person in Bangladesh that's making 18 cents an hour cares about the quality of the shirt that they're putting out? Probably not. These women make sure that everything is perfect. That's their livelihood. So on your left there, you see the fair trade workers. Happy, smiling faces. On the right are the big box conglomerate store garment workers. They don't look very happy. At Mata Traders, if your productivity is low, you can ask for extra training. You can ask for fewer hours. At the clothing factory for Walmart in Dhaka, Bangladesh, if your productivity is low, you lose your job, period. Mata Traders, like most fair trade places, offer more than just a job. There's on-site daycare. So if they do have to go in to do like the sewing or the embroidery, they switch off. For half of the day, some of the women will do sewing. Some of the women will take care of the children. And then midday, they switch. The other women will take care of the children. And the women that were doing that in the morning will go and sew. They get regular medical checkups. They get paid maternity leave. They get retirement pensions. They get overtime pay. They offer after-school programs for children. They offer literacy classes for adults, computer training, hygiene classes, as well as fair pay, living wages, safe conditions. So I've ruined clothing for you. Chocolate. Everybody likes chocolate, right? Have you ever met anyone who doesn't like chocolate? A couple people here and there, but they're definitely outliers, right? Where's chocolate actually come from? These trees grow these giant beans, and it's hard to tell the scale in this picture, but the beans are about this big, about two to three times the size of a football. And that's called a cacao bean. And then you break that open, and all of the little seeds are what are used to actually produce the chocolate. The cacao trees only grow in tropical climates, so most of the world's chocolate comes from two West African countries, Ghana and the Ivory Coast. Probably about 3/4 of all of the chocolate in the world is coming from one of those two countries. They sell to every major chocolate company that you've ever heard of. Hershey's, Godiva, Lindt, Mars, Reese's, Nestle's, all get chocolate from these countries. Does anybody know the dirty little secret about chocolate, though? It makes us fat. Okay, that's probably not a secret. And dark chocolate's actually good for you. Most of the chocolate produced in Ghana and Ivory Coast is the product of child labor and child slavery. About 1.8 million children work on these chocolate plantations in these two countries. Only about 15% of those receive any kind of pay, and that's typically less than $1 a day. And they tend to work 14 to 16-hour days. The majority of the children on these farms are between the ages of 12 and 16, but they have found children as young as 5 harvesting these chocolate beans. Typically what's going to happen, and it's not all children from the countries, they go out to Mali, to Niger, to Burkina Faso, and they go into these poor villages and they tell the families, hey, we've got jobs for the children. They can come, they can make money, they'll get a better life, then they'll be able to bring all that money back home. So the families willingly send their children with these plantation owners. And then once they're there, it's a very different story. They can't make it back. What 8-year-old's going to be able to make it across a couple of countries to get back home by themselves with no money? It's not easy work. You've got to take a machete and chop down these cacao beans. How many of you would trust your 5-year-olds with a machete? They lose fingers, they lose limbs. They're trying to carry bags of these beans that weigh as much or more than they do. They're not well taken care of. They're not well fed. They're not receiving health care. They're not going to school. So a lot of them, by the time they reach adulthood, continue to work on the plantation because what else are they going to do? They have no other skills. They have no education. And that's the ones that are lucky enough to reach adulthood. Hershey's, because of the growing worldwide awareness of this, not so much in this country, but there's a awareness worldwide, has vowed to be slave-free by 2020. They made that vow in 2010. They've got a little over 3 years left. How many steps do you think Hershey's has taken in the last almost 7 years to achieve that goal? Yeah. None. They've made the vow, but they have not done anything so far to actually reach that. I know you don't want to give up your chocolate, so there are alternatives. There is fair trade chocolate. These are democratically owned chocolate farms. They're cooperatives. The people who are working on the chocolate plantations own the land. There's no child labor being used. There's no slavery. Everyone that's working is receiving a fair wage. You can look for the fair trade symbols on the chocolate, which you've been seeing up in the corners here, some of the different fair trade symbols that you might see on products. There are fair trade stores that sell it. Kroger sells fair trade and ethically sourced chocolate. Endangered species chocolate is an ethically sourced chocolate. Yes, it does cost a little more, but that's what happens when you actually pay people rather than using slavery. Almost as many people that like chocolate like coffee. If you're not a coffee lover and you think, oh, that coffee's not really all that popular, 2.25 billion cups of coffee are consumed worldwide every single day. That's a lot of coffee. Most of their coffee is coming from developing countries, especially in South America. Again, it takes more of a tropical climate, similar to the chocolate. Unfortunately, coffee has a very similar story to chocolate. A lot of child labor, a lot of child slavery being used to grow the coffee. In Brazil, in areas that produce coffee as opposed to areas that don't, the rate of child labor is 37% higher in the areas that are coffee producing. In Honduras, 40% of all of the coffee plantation workers are children. Adults who work on the coffee plantations earn somewhere between $2 and $3 a day. The children, if they're paid at all, get about half of that. Get $1 to $1.50 a day. In 2005, the International Labor Organization had taken 4,000 children off of coffee plantations just in the Dominican Republic. That's not even all of the coffee producing regions, just the Dominican Republic. They're working 12, 13-hour days, 7 days a week. So when are they going to school? No, they're not. Just like the chocolate plantations. So when you go and you buy that cup of coffee and you think about, man, this is so expensive. Can't they make it cheaper? Only about 1% is actually going to the people working on the coffee plantations. The rest of that is going into the pocket of whatever conglomerate organization is selling that coffee. There is fair trade coffee. There's an organization called Fair Trade International, and it works sort of like a union for the coffee producers. It requires that they receive a living wage and have safe working conditions. They cannot use any child labor, and everyone has to be paid equally, men and women. And you see here, it really does not affect the price of the coffee. We've just cut out all of these extra steps of people who are getting paid for not really doing much. Fair trade coffee costs about the same as coffee that's using child slavery. So why in the world would we continue to use child slavery when we can produce the coffee for the same price and not hurt anybody doing it? Now, before you panic about your cup of coffee, Starbucks is the world's largest purchaser of fair trade coffee. They buy more than anybody else. Not all of their coffee is fair trade. You have to ask for it. But they do have fair trade coffee. They are making an attempt that all of their coffee is at least ethically sourced. And I'll get into the difference between fair trade and ethical in a minute. They claim 100%, but if you actually read their own paperwork, they're at about 95%, which is better than most places. So you don't have to go boycotting Starbucks. So we've looked at some specific products. Let's look at some specific places. Haiti. Haiti is regarded as the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere, if not the entire world. 80% of Haitians live below the poverty line. That's below less than $2 a day. Half of the Haitians living in urban areas are unemployed. Part of that problem is they're not able to grow the food that they need. 60% of their food has to be imported from other areas, which is raising the cost of the food. Things that we take for granted, like electricity. Only 10% of rural Haitians have access to electricity. Almost 100% of them, except for those very few wealthy in the urban areas, have access to computers or internet. What would we do without our internet access every single day, right? Some of the factors that have led to this extreme poverty in Haiti: the recurring natural crises, earthquakes, hurricanes, flooding. 2010, there was a huge, over a magnitude 7 earthquake in Haiti. Wiped out entire cities. Buildings just collapsed. Hundreds of thousands of people left homeless. You may remember a huge push with the Red Cross to donate. You could even text your donation in to help the Haitians damaged by this earthquake. Most of that money went to purchasing tents. Tents that they were still living in, that 350,000 people were still living in 2012 when they were hit with Hurricane Sandy. We didn't hear much about that hurricane hitting Haiti. We were more concerned with our precious roller coaster on the East Coast that got covered by some sand and took a couple weeks to dig out because of the hurricane. But this left another 100 and something thousand people homeless in Haiti, with still hundreds of thousands living in tents from the earthquake. Just a few months ago, Hurricane Matthew went through, killed hundreds of people, flattened up to 80% of coastal cities. They're dealing with political instability. So it's hard to recover from these natural disasters when you don't have a good political system in place. They've been dealing with a lot of corruption. People were fed up with the government. So several years ago, they decided they wanted to go a different route. Instead of electing a politician, they elected a local celebrity. Well, that didn't work out very well for them either. That person was even more corrupt than the older politicians had been. Recently stepped down, so now they're dealing with not having really anybody at all in place. They lack infrastructure. Even if they could grow the food in the rural areas to supply everyone, the roads to get that food into the cities simply don't exist. Education levels are very low. And there's a power structure in place that attempts to preserve those levels of inequality. Basically keeping the poor poor. There is hope for Haiti. There are some fair trade organizations there. Caribbean Crafts was founded in 1990, founded by a couple of Dutch men, but is now a women-owned company. They employ about 500 artisans, so helping those artisans, helping their families. They give them the training, they give them the design ideas, and then they go out, they make the crafts and sell the crafts. They get fair wages, they get free health care, they get accident insurance, maternity leave, paid holidays, sick leave, they get interest-free loans, they get retirement pensions. That sounds better than most jobs you can get here. The CAH was founded in 1973. They work with about 170 artisans in Haiti. They are known for making art out of steel drums. So they get their oil shipped in these huge 50-gallon steel drums. And whatever company uses the oil out of that, and then they just toss them. They're lying on the beach, they're floating in the water, they're polluting everything. So these artisan groups, they go out and they grab these steel drums that aren't being used, and they take snips and they take nails and hammers and they cut out designs and they punch in texture and they create these beautiful pieces of metal art out of garbage. So they're being employed and they're taking a pollutant out of the environment. Singing Rooster is a coffee and chocolate producer in Haiti. So they chocolate plantations, coffee plantations. So not only are they employing people fairly, not using child slavery, not using child labor, but it's helping to rebuild the environment in Haiti by planting trees. The earth isn't getting washed away. It's making things safer. It's bringing clean water into areas that didn't have clean water before in order to irrigate these plantations. So why do we need fair trade? Well, because of all of these horrific things that I've been talking about. All of these people not being treated well. Child slavery, child labor, gender inequality in pay. Fair trade works off of several principles. They work to create opportunities for artisans, for producers in underdeveloped countries. It's not a handout. It's not charity. It's giving people a way to make a living using techniques that have been passed down through generations in that area many times. They get to set the price. The people who are making the products set the price. Do you think big conglomerate box store is letting the people who are making their products set the price? No, not at all. Fair trade gives these artisans cash advances, prompt final payments. And occasionally, a bigger store will go to one of these artisan groups and make a huge purchase. That's not really a good thing usually, because they want to work the way they want to work. They want to say, okay, we want to buy 10,000 of your product. Yeah, these little local fair trade stores are probably buying 50 at a time. Fantastic, we just got an order for 10,000. They're not giving them any money up front. So now they've got to go and they've got to borrow and take out loans to be able to purchase all of the materials to make those 10,000. When a fair trade organization purchases from that artisan group, they give 50% up front. When we place an order, we pay them 50% of the order the second we place it. Then once it's shipped, fair trade groups, the day it ships, pay the other 50%. These bigger stores, not even then. It might be 2 or 3 or 6 months after it's shipped before they finally make that payment. Fair trade develops long-term relationships with these artisans. Okay, it might be 50 a month, but they can guarantee that it's going to be 50 next month, and the month after that, and the month after that. They know they've got a steady income from that. Fair trade fights for gender equality, equal pay for men and women, equal leadership roles for men and women, especially in countries where that is not typical. Fair trade makes sure that the working conditions are safe and healthy, that factories aren't going to collapse, that boilers aren't going to explode, and that if something bad does happen, that people aren't locked in to where they can't get out. Fair trade makes sure that the environment isn't harmed. So it's sustainable resources. It's not polluting the environment. It's not cutting down forests. It's not killing animals. If you see leather in a fair trade store, which you don't see very much, it all is coming from India. and it's all by Hindus where the cows have lived their life, died of natural causes. You will sometimes also see ethically sourced or ethically traded. Ethically sourced, ethically traded is very similar to fair trade. There's no certified ethical trade label where there is a certified fair trade label. Both strive for better treatment of people, animals, environment. Ethically sourced concentrates more on the supply chain, whereas fair trade concentrates more on the artisans, the people producing the product. Everything that is certified fair trade is certified by the Fair Trade Federation. They are all not-for-profit businesses, provide fair incomes, employment for people who wouldn't otherwise have that opportunity for employment, ethically sourced, ethically produced products. They work to educate the public here and in other countries about fair trade, about the artisans, about these cultures in their countries, and give you a way to ethically spend your dollars. Here are some of the places that fair trade artisans live. So you can see it's pretty much all over the world. Even right here in the USA, there's a couple of fair trade organizations. Soup of Success is based out of Detroit. They work with women who have recently escaped domestic abuse issues. They work there for 6 months to a year, gain skills, gain experience, and then are able to go out and get a job. After that, they have that resume builder and hopefully then support themselves and stay out of that abusive issue. Here's just a few examples of products. These are cards from Rwanda. And let's see if this will work.
These handmade cards are different. They're not just beautiful, each one taking over half an hour to make, but they're helping to change lives in one of the world's poorest countries, Rwanda, a country infamous for the 1994 genocide when nearly a million people were killed. But Rwanda is now recovering, and the capital is a bustling city, intent on moving on and learning from the past. Now it can confront the problems of other African countries, where death comes not from the machete, but from mosquito-spread diseases and HIV. Rachel is one of around 40 orphan young people for whom these cards are a way out of poverty. It's Mundo, just outside Kigali. Rachel is now 20, but when she was 13, she lost both parents and was left in sole charge of her younger brother and sister. Harriet is 50, and Jacques is 12.
We hardly ate. It was not easy to find food or anything to eat here.
With no education, Rachel's job prospects were poor, but she now makes beautiful greeting cards that are sold in countries all over the world. Rachel's earnings have enabled her to improve their house.
We put mud bricks and doors and windows in. Now I'm able to provide for food and even save a little.
Her salary pays for school books for her brother and sister, giving them a chance for an education that Rachel never had. The work at Cards from Africa gives these young people more than just an income, though.
They have some self-respect and their confidence is increasing. They used to survive, so it was not important for them to have like the clean clothes. But now, because they think that their future has been improved, they are planning something for the future, they can take care of today. You can't plan for tomorrow. If you're not sure that you will have something to eat today.
Cards from Africa's cards are environmentally friendly too because they're made from offcuts obtained from local printing presses. The waste that normally gets burnt comes in many colours, but it's got to be sorted before it can be turned into handmade paper. First, the waste paper is mixed with water by hand or with a machine. Then, it's strained through a wire mesh onto a wooden frame. The resulting sheet is placed on glass to dry in the sun. Some of the paper is later dyed with different colours. Once the paper is dried, it is then incorporated into the cards, and the hard work of cutting out and gluing together all the intricate shapes begins. With hundreds of different designs being produced by hand, there has to be an emphasis on consistent quality.
Another goal that the theatre has as a business to be the leading in producing quality handmade cards. So quality is another thing that's driving this. We are looking for making better quality cards.
Cards from Africa believes passionately in fair trade and has a strong desire to provide top quality handmade greeting cards for you to send to those you love, whilst at the same time helping to restore dignity to vulnerable youth like Russia. You really can make a direct and positive difference in lives like Russia's.
Every 13 cards sold one day of dignified employment is created in cards from Africa. So why don't you consider joining us in helping to make a difference? Customers love our cards because of the life-changing stories, and also because each card incorporates handmade paper from recycled bottles. We're members of the World Fair Trade Organization because Cards from Africa is making a real difference in real lives through fair wages and conditions. There is no minimum wage, and not only do we have a special offer for retailers that want for the first time, we will also send you a free bonus the second time. So join us.
See how happy they look while they're at work? How many of us look that happy all day while we're at work? One of the biggest things, if you ask these artisans what's the biggest difference that it makes, is it is sending your children, or in that case younger siblings, to school. Breaking the chain of poverty. Poverty begets poverty. If you can't afford school uniforms, books, paper, pencils, you can't send your kids to school. They can't get an education. They can't get a good job. They're going to be just as poor as you were. And it's just going to be generation after generation of that. I've been in places where the kids run up to you and they don't ask for money. It's bick, bick, bick. They're asking for a pen so that they can do their schoolwork. They want to go to school. They want to get an education. They know how valuable that is. Something that we very much take for granted here. Asha imports out of India. They take the saris, that's the long flowing piece of fabric that the women wear as a garment. Once it gets older, maybe it's a little tattered, you can't quite wear it anymore, they'll take it, salvage the pieces that they can, turn that into scarves, blankets, pocketbooks, etc. Guatemala is a very impoverished nation. Here they take the huipiles, which are the shirts that the women wear. They're embroidered with these beautiful flowers. It gets older, it gets torn, it gets dirty beyond being able to be worn. They take that top of it that has those embroidered flowers and they turn them into coin purses or wallets. So they're reusing things. It's good for the environment. It's not ending up in a landfill. And they're able to earn an income off of that. This is my personal favorite product. It's a company called Mr. Elipu. It's out of Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, elephants are being killed. Not for meat, not even necessarily for their tusks, but because the elephants are encroaching on human land. Okay, it was elephant land way before the humans were there. The elephants are just going to where they've always gone. But now they're walking through somebody's field, and so they're being killed for that. This company decided to do something for those elephants. They make paper out of elephant poop. The elephants eat all plant products. Those plant products don't necessarily break down terribly well through the elephant's digestive system. So they take the elephant poo, they boil it to sanitize it, they take out the plant fibers, they bleach them, and turn those plant fibers into paper. So it's employing people, giving people jobs with a fair wage, and it's making the elephants useful, so now people don't want to kill the elephants because they can make money off of the elephants. You can get cards, you can get just regular paper, you can get little post-it notes, you can get bookmarks. They're really have been expanding their products. It's a fantastic conversation starter. Somebody picks that up. Oh, where'd you get this? Oh, that's made from elephant poop. When I was working in the fair trade store, there were very few times when I would show someone this product that they did not buy it. Thank you for your interest and your attention today. And I'm just going to leave you with a few websites here if you would like to learn any more about fair trade. Does anyone have any questions for me about anything that I've talked about? Or yes, ma'am.
Where can some of these products be bought in Lafayette, like the African cards?
There are a couple of stores. There's one on Main Street, One Earth, yeah. And Sarah, were you saying there were some other?
Yes, One Earth. Most of them are also food, but Global Gifts in Indianapolis also sells a lot of fair trade products.
Yeah.
And then there's actually a handout over on the table that lists a bunch of places locally.
Yes.
You mentioned you've actually been to some of the places that with the children asking for pins. What were they, or what country?
Where the children were asking for pins was mostly in Egypt. So I spent 2 winters there, and I would travel out to some of the very impoverished areas of Egypt. And there's only just starting to see fair trade in these places in Egypt, but yeah, you go into the bigger cities like Luxor or Cairo, and it's bakshish, which is money. But out in these poorer areas, it's big. Because they don't know much English, and they've learned that that's the name of a pen. So yeah, the children come up in big. So the second time that I went back, I went to Staples, and I bought the big giant boxes of pens, and I just carried them with me, carried a box of pens with me wherever I went, and they are so incredibly happy just to get a ballpoint pen. $5 or $6 for a box of 50 pens, and it makes such a difference to them. Yeah.
Are you still active as an advocate, I mean like a positional advocate with the Fair Trade in any way?
I no longer have a paid position there. I do go in occasionally and still volunteer.
And where would that be located, where you were working before?
It's on Massachusetts Avenue in Indianapolis. It's called Global Gifts. There's also one in Nora on the north side, which would be a little closer to Lafayette. Do you have a?
Where was the second location?
It's Nora Plaza. It's off of 86th Street on the north side of Indianapolis. Yeah, they have one in Bloomington and one in Columbus, Ohio as well, but those are a little farther away. Did you have them back? I'm sorry, what was that?
Any European?
No, because they sell fair trade, but the fair to produce fair trade typically is very impoverished countries or developing countries. Not that there isn't poverty in Europe, but as far as I know, there are no groups working with those countries.
Can you explain one more time the difference between ethically sourced and fair traded?
Really, in a nutshell, you have to purchase the fair trade certification. So many groups that can't get funding from someone for that simply go with the ethically sourced. It's almost the same. Yeah. It's just not as policed, I guess. Yeah. So if I was going to purchase ethically sourced, I would maybe want to do a little bit of my own background research on that company just to make sure that they are meeting the standards, because they have to self-police those standards. Whereas with the Fair Trade certification, it's set out by the Fair Trade Federation, the standards that they have to meet, or they lose that certification. But a lot of groups just can't go with that because it does cost money. I would like to see fair trade coffee being sold, fair trade chocolate being sold. I'd like to see fair trade cards in our bookstores.
Do the governments in these countries get involved with child slavery?
Yes and no. Child slavery is illegal in Ghana and in Ivory Coast, and so there's a lot of denial by the governments that it actually happens. But if you do a surprise visit to one of the plantations, there's the children. There's a excellent documentary. It's called The Bitter Side of Chocolate. And it'll give you a lot of the information about the child slavery and the chocolate plantation. I think it's on Netflix, or at least it was at some point. If not, it's been broken up into sections on YouTube so that it doesn't violate copyright. You have to watch 20 minutes at a time of it, but yeah. Any other questions? So thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much for your time and checking out.
No problem at all.
Stop.